Thanks for tuning into another edition of Another Dolphins podcast. We have reached the end of the 2024 marathon. Josh, week 18, Dolphins at Jets from MetLife Stadium with playoff hopes still on the line. Before we get into the game, though, I wanted to ask you, we do these podcasts 2 to 3 times a week. It's so difficult not to get caught up in the week-by-week actions of the NFL. I mean, I couldn't tell you the final Dolphins lost to the Bills in week 2. That's beside the point. I wanted to start, Josh, and just get your feelings, your thoughts. This was a franchise that began this season, the 2024 NFL season, with 11 Pro Bowls on the roster. We saw how the season started, 2-6 to begin the year, and here we are, as Miami Dolphins as possible, 8-8 in the hunt, man. I wouldn't call it a wild ride. I wouldn't call it a fun ride, but it's been a ride.
Yeah, and it's been a ride. That's the best way to put it. And it's that so Dolphins way. We are still somehow in the hunt after all of this. I mean, this season, and maybe I'm at fault for this. I think I once said before, enjoy every week. You're going to miss Dolphins football when it's gone, but I don't know, man. But with week 18 right now, I am ready for this thing to be over with, for this wild roller coaster ride to be over with. But testament to those players, right, for battling their asses off. We as fans, we kind of probably checked out a long time ago at certain points throughout the season, but they kept grinding, they kept battling, and they came back, won 7 in a row almost, and we're right back in this thing. So crazy to be in the hunt at week 18 against New York Jets, but kind of wish we would have been put out of misery a couple weeks ago.
It's so tough because I kind of feel that too. The last thing I think anyone wants is a sad loss, just to wrap up the season. But Josh, I agree. I think a lot of the players deserve a lot of credit, and I think the Dolphins have a really good foundation of team leaders. I think Calais Campbell. I even think Jalen Ramsey. He doesn't talk quite a bit. I think Teron Armstead. I mean, hell, you see Teron Armstead even hyping someone up like Chop Robinson. But Josh, when the Dolphins hired Mike McDaniel to be head coach of this franchise, I think the one concern everyone had was, okay, let's see it when things start getting rough. Let's see him go up to a 300-pound lineman and tell him to, get your head in the game, get your head out of your ass, something like that. Does Mike McDaniel deserve some credit here? Because I think there were some very, very ugly games early in the year. But when you consider the biggest fear we had about McDaniel was his inability to lead a locker room full of men. I mean, 2-6 is about as doom and gloom as you can get. And he got everyone to continue coming every day, suit up. I mean, almost everyone. We could call out some players, but we won't do that here. I do think, though, that Mike McDaniel needs some sort of acknowledgement as we start to get into the general off-season theme ideas in terms of the overall direction of this franchise.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that's what makes this so tough, right? I mean, even with Chris Greer, I'm down on him as anyone, but you can sit there and I'm just saying you can look at draft classes and make a case as to why he should stick around, right? So Mike McDaniel being able to, overcome some of our, previous, thoughts about him. We thought, like you said, he can't go up to that guy. He's more of that buddy than a boss, but he's shown at least, in the locker room that they've been able to overcome that and go on these win streaks. It is just coach talk. Adversity is opportunity, things like that. But when their back's against the wall, man, this team continuously claws their way out of it for their head coach. So let's give him a little bit of a tip of the hat. But again, if we want anything to happen with this franchise the right way, you got to kind of just, take the emotion aside and just let the chips fall the way they might, because I don't know what's best for the Dolphins. I don't know that anyone truly does at this point, and we're just going to continue to spin that endless wheel. But let's give Mike McDaniel a little bit of props for sure.
Let the chips fall, and Josh, sometimes it feels like they're free falling. The Miami Dolphins are preparing for Tyler Huntley to get his second straight start for the Miami Dolphins. Now, don't get me wrong. I think he played pretty well last week. The Dolphins won 20-3 against the Cleveland Browns. Not a great sign for the offense, but Huntley led the team in rushing yards. He looked incredibly comfortable despite being sacked 4 times. But Josh, let's not bury the lead here. This is the second time in 3 years that the Dolphins have a franchise quarterback who just signed a $200 million extension, and for one reason or another, and he is not available. On top of that, Josh, the same franchise quarterback, the one out of the last 3 years, he was available. They were up 3 games in the division with 5 to play, and they lost the division to Buffalo at home on the final game of the season while scoring just 14 points. I understand the idea that there's 20 or 53 men on a roster. There's 11 people on the field at every time. Josh, I think we kind of get blue in the face more than anyone talking about this on how everybody needs to walk in the same direction and walking in the same direction forward. But when you're the highest paid player of the franchise, when you're about to, the market's the market, when you're about to start making $50 million a year, and I think one thing we've both been so vocal about since we've done this podcast is just kind of the tone of X, the tone of Twitter. I think we've always stood on the side of don't blow everything up, let the process play out. But God, man, as we sit here and just kind of reflect on the season, and I'm glad we kind of started with some overall thoughts because it's hard to get caught up in things. But when we think about like Tua, the grouchy, I'm a football player, and just the way he's approached the season, I have such a hard time of engaging in the Tua arguments, not because it's the same conversation going back and forth, just that when you look at the other side, the idea of like, give us a break. Like we understand the injury concerns. We understand all these issues, but 2 of the last 3 years, Tua has been unavailable for the final stretch of the season. This season, there's rumors. The idea is that the injury he suffered wasn't even on a sack. It was when, again, he was outside of the pocket and doing something foolish. And then he re-injured it the following week. That's the idea. Josh, I have such a hard time. And I'm a Tua guy. He's going to be back next year. But anything after that, man, I'm ready to start having a conversation. I'm ready to the best ability. And God, it sounds gross to say now, but it's availability. And there's so many people who have been so frustrated about Tua. And I've always trusted the process a little bit. But God, man, it's so hard not to see that other side of the argument at this point. When you're sitting here, you're on the verge of your 5th straight winning season. And your quarterback hasn't been a major driving force in at least 3 of those. And if you want to go back to the Flores days, you could say that Ryan Fitzpatrick, your closer, he came in a couple times. Dude, I'm not trying to hate on Tua. Don't get me wrong. And I want to get your thoughts here, but it's just such a dynamic conversation. And when we've reached an end of another season where he's not here, man, the conversation needs to start to change.
Yeah, it does. And I think there's nothing wrong with the way you look at it, the way I look at it. I mean, I think most sane Dolphin fans feel the way you do, Jake. I mean, I'm a Tua stan. I mean, I was the guy that I think there's probably a video of me tearing up as the Dolphins drafted him.
Oh, there is.
I will be the first one to admit, man, this guy is, we need to see more out of him, right? Especially after the new contract. The videos continue to circulate of him, show me the money. That was cute, right? When you came into the season. But now, man, late in the year again, late January, late December, we continue to talk about how we move the goalposts, and Tua Tagovailoa, there's nothing he can do, to have some people, shift into a pro Tua stance. But the biggest thing has been, his availability late in the year and what he does in big games. And when you're not even available in the late part of the season in these games that are crucial, I mean, he's sitting here saying he can come back in the playoffs. Dude, the playoffs aren't going to happen. I hate to break it to you. The playoffs are not going to happen, and they shouldn't happen. I don't know where the Dolphins go from here, man. Obviously, they're running it back with Tua Tagovailoa next year. But for me, a guy to a stand until the day I die, the Dolphins have to be looking at themselves and thinking, this is what we signed up for, and we need more than this. And I just don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the roster, right, man? We are in such cap hell. And now, like you mentioned, his cap's going to go up. Good teams can overcome that when the quarterback can make those plays, can overcome things late in the year. And we can't even get our guy on the field. So, I hope to God someday they can cut this and they can sit here and laugh at us. Tua Tagovailoa is a Hall of Famer, but that we would want nothing more than that, right? We do not need to be right or wrong. We just want to see our damn team win a playoff game, and you can't do it when your starting quarterback is not even suiting up in late December and January. And like you said, when he does, he wasn't good enough, period.
And there are these niche arguments too, where it's like, oh, well, we've seen Tua throw it deep and they'll show some sort of highlight from it. We've seen him make all the plays. That's why he's still here. That's why he's got the contract extension. Our issue is that he's not always here. And man, I was watching the Bengals. I think it was last week where they won in overtime. They had a shot to win, I think, right at the buzzer. They had a shot to win early in overtime. They had a missed kick. They had a garbage defense. So the idea that like Joe Burrow has this great team around him is foolish in itself too, where you need your quarterback to overcome some situations. There are going to be we need more situations more frequently where we're looking at Tua like, did he just do that? Like these mind-blowing Superman situations. It's not always fair, man, but I don't think you should be in a fair situation if you're getting paid $50 million a year. Like you are getting paid 50, like I can't state that enough, that when we look at like, Chase Claypool should have been running a stronger out route and Tua, threw the ball to the right place. Okay, sure. One guy is making $300,000, which don't get me wrong, butt ton of money compared to your franchise quarterback. And I think when you hear Tua say, yeah, I'll be out there for there next week, no ifs, ands, or buts, or, I'm a football player till the day I die. Josh, is this a sign of me getting older? It's just like, I can't stand his tone at this point. It just feels like there's a level of self-awareness for so many people who love this franchise and want to stand behind you. It's like you're not doing anything to give them any sort of like ammunition on your side. It just seems like you're just kind of pushing us farther and farther away.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, man. I don't think you're an old man, but I'm also the oldest man. So I mean, I can't really say for sure, but yeah, man, it is so frustrating. I think what is so enlightening, or should be so enlightening to the Dolphins is we came into the year, we knew the concussions, we knew what he was trying to do that. This was his hip, man. This was the hip that you drafted him. Okay, it's separate, I guess, from his college thing, but it's still the same area, right? The hip injury that it had came from something they probably sustained in college. So you knew you were drafting him. And again, it would seem like a routine play. I think we kind of just joked, okay, to it. Yeah, but he came up on the injury report like just randomly with a hip, right? And we're all like, okay, it's a Wednesday hip injury. He's just sitting out or something. And now it's 2 games he's out, and they say that his mobility's an issue. The only way this thing can heal, and without there's no surgery that can heal this issue. He has to just step back and let everything heal itself. So it sounds like he'd be ready to go next week, but man, it's just so damn frustrating, like you said, to just hear his tone, his attitude at times. I think you had written down is what he said about the concussion thing, like not to get concussions or something like that. Didn't you have
what did he learn from getting a concussion? Don't get it. Like that's like when you're sitting there, dude, like that's like
my kids, something my kids are going to say when they're teenagers, and I'm just going to want to backhand them.
I was going to say, dude, no offense at all, but that sounds like something a 3rd grader would come home and just say with like the most smart ass tone, where you're just like, like you can't show us like anything that there was like any sort of growth there. And I saw some posts on Twitter like Dak got paid this year. He's injured. There's even people mentioning like Joe Burrow got paid. He dealt with injuries. It's the consistency of it. Like Dak Prescott has had great seasons. Dak Prescott was in the running for MVP multiple times, and you could argue that Tua was too. But in the seasons he wasn't available to finish the year. And Josh, do you remember what was it? The preseason, like. There was like everyone was trying to be like Sherlock Holmes with Joe Burrow. He couldn't like hold a water bottle because of a wrist injury, and how he's never going to be able to play football again. And all of a sudden he's looking like Dan Marino out there. Like the injuries happen. And I know there's such a crucial part to the game, but this is the 2nd time this year, man, where Tua got hurt diving headfirst when he could have just slid. He could have just a situation that was over. Right. And when we ask him to do like the superhuman things, it's almost like he thinks that's what it has to be. I got to dive head first instead what superhuman for Tua would be, Josh, because he's done it before. Remember the Baltimore game? He threw a touchdown to Jalen Waddle to the back left side of the end zone, where he did the sickest spin move to flip around and get open in the space. That's the agility Tua we wanted to see. Nothing past the line of scrimmage, because both times it's happened. And when we say, hey, man, what have you learned as you continue to do these dive head first? Don't get concussions. Thanks, dude. Now we're going into our 2nd chance at the playoffs without you available. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and this will be, I think, the 6th game he'll miss, and that's the most in a career. I mean, it is so aggravating, man, that this is just where we're at, and the dives and things like that. Like you said, it could all have been avoided, and then from just to get up and kind of just whatever. I guess at least the silver lining here is that they have Snoop Huntley, right, to kind of keep their playoff hopes alive, because that has to have something to do with it. Tua is saying he can come back next week. I mean, they have to feel like they can beat the Jets in Week 18 with Snoop Huntley at the helm.
It really does sound like this is a franchise that has found their backup quarterbacks. Last week, Snoop 22 of 26 for 225 yards and a touchdown. Josh, I don't have my notes available from last week, but 4 incompletions. I think 1 was a drop, 1 was a throwaway. Oh, there was a 3rd one that could be like
one was a spike, and then there was another one. I think there was another one you said too. Yeah, whatever. It was like credited with like a completion percentage or a QBR of like 98 point something when it was corrected, and just played out of his mind. I don't know about you, Jake, but I feel like Snoop Huntley is the perfect backup quarterback for what the Miami Dolphins need. I just feel like with Tua Tagovailoa's questions, you might need that next tier of a backup, or you almost need a fringe quarterback one that can just sit back and groom. But I'm spiraling out of control here, man. Snoop Huntley.
One question. Sorry, not to go too deep into this, Josh, because I think the Dolphins right now are in a perfect opportunity where if they wanted to make a trade for like a Josh Rosen, like the Josh Rosen they made in 2019. Garbage
I like
trade.
that
Josh
one.
Rosen
I like
sucks.
that one.
I think right now the Dolphins are in a spot where that'd be something worth interest. Someone younger, Tua's going to be your starter, but throw the dart.
JJ you can say JJ. I was going to say you can say it. I see. And dude, he's got the visor. I don't know, man. I mean, that's Second, I feel like it's a more than a second now. It's just weird the way the NFL kind of goes. I've seen people say, "Would you get multiple first?" I've seen people say, he might be QB1 in this draft class if he were to come out. So I don't know, man. That all sounds crazy to me, but I had no issue in hindsight. Even at the time, I was all for the Josh Rosen trade, a former first round pick that you could get for a second rounder with the 20 plus years of not being able to have a quarterback. Throw the dart. So yeah, I'd be more than fine to go back and run that back. But yeah, I was all about the Josh Rosen trade, and I mean, you guys could point the finger, put all the egg on my face for that one.
Yeah, I'm sorry to kind of go down that route there. I think that's something
I
worth
love it.
talking about, and I think that'd be interesting. I don't know if I'd do like a first or a second round pick. If you could finagle someone for like a third round pick, because dude, watching that Ohio State game, man, give me one of those watching the Georgia Bulldogs defense. I know they lost that game, but I think it was like a kick return. There was some exposed plays. Give me one of those linebackers in the first round, man. One of those guys next to Jordan Brooks. My oh my, I think that's kind of where I've set my heart.
Yeah, you're getting excited. And Jordan Brooks, I mean, we kind of talked about the Dolphins being snubbed in Pro Bowl. I was surprised he didn't make the list for the Pro Bowl. Zach Sealer's another guy that probably could have been out there. But yeah, man, Jordan Brooks, if we can get him a guy, Tyrell Dotson, he looks solid again, but you need that next tier, I think, next to him. I'm all for one of those younger rookies.
Sorry, I kind of spiraled out of control there too. But Josh, I wanted to ask you, Tyreek Hill, to kind of bring us back to the offense. He had his best game, it seemed like, in forever last week with Snoop Huntley under center. And what was so fun about this, Josh, is that Snoop Huntley was doing these throws where, like, I don't know if it's a bad habit, but it was like he was running up to the line of scrimmage to throw the ball. He was like he was a shortstop with his crow hop there. And anytime I see a quarterback do that, where they're like running towards the line of scrimmage and throwing, I expect it not to be a completion. But man, Snoop Huntley's accuracy, when you have the speed of Tyreek Hill, was just so damn impressive. And it sounds like this week, Jalen Waddle could be involved. But on the year, Tyreek Hill, 939 receiving yards. Does he get 61 on Sunday? You got Sauce. You got a pretty good Jets defense over there.
Yeah, I think he does. I think they found a way last week to at least, he looked more determined, right? I don't know if it's because Tua was out. I don't know if it's because the season was on the line or, maybe he heard us chirping at him or was all those, he had a shitty game the week prior. That's exactly what it was. But, he really showed up last week. So I think no matter who's covering him, that he can go out there and he can eclipse 1,000 yards. Is it fifth straight or something crazy like that? Either way, man, I like what Snoop Huntley's done over these last few weeks. I mean, he's truly gotten a better grasp of this offense since he's been back. I know he mentioned the motions and things like that, but to see what this offense could look like with Jalen Waddle out there, I mean, I can't get excited for a Week 18 against the Jets. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
I feel you. Something worth talking about, though, especially for next year, the offensive line. Teron Armstead, he's not practicing because of the knee injury. You got Patrick Paul, but another issue that's emerging, and Josh, I think this is some concern I saw early in the season. Kendall Lamb, Teron Armstead, these are two guys who said they were kind of leaning towards retiring at the end of the year. 17 games. It's a long football season. Kendall Lamb's been awesome, but he couldn't make it through the season. He's been placed on injured reserve. What are you doing at tackle? Do you have Patrick Paul at right tackle and hope Teron Armstead could play? Or is it going to be Jackson Carman again, maybe?
Jackson Carman, San Diego. I mean, I'm thinking it's gonna be Teron Armstead. I wish I had the tweet pulled up, and I don't want to be ignorant here, but I think there is some kind of like $400,000 incentive that Teron Armstead gets if he plays X amount of offensive snaps. So, I mean, this dude's a warrior. If he can go out there, I mean, he's probably gonna be battling through it. So, I'd love to see Teron Armstead out there this week, but most importantly to me, I want to see Teron Armstead maybe. How would the Dolphins even bring him back, though? I can't even look at their cap situation. I mean, with all the different moves they have to make, I mean, you almost have to hope that he rides off into the sunset. And Kendall Lamb already suggested he would. So, got to give a shout out to both those guys. Kendall Lamb really stepped up when the Dolphins need him as that rotational tackle. Wish we had him now instead of Jackson Carman, but he and Armstead are probably gone. So, big moves need to be made at offensive tackle. Thank God we had Patrick Paul in that face mask, though.
Stud. Sauce Gardner, he hasn't been practicing because of a hamstring injury, and the same is true with Quinnen Williams, an absolute stud inside. And Josh, something I think the Dolphins did really well when they beat the Jets at home 32-26, which that even still leaves a really bad taste in my mouth from that game, where I think Miami kind of messed around a little bit in the first half. But Josh, could this be an opportunity just to kind of Mike McDaniel to show like I have the running game figured out? Because this was a scenario. Devon Achane, it seems like he's averaging 2.5 yards per carry every week. I think the Dolphins do a lot of great things getting him involved as a receiver, but against the Jets, man, something that stood out, they were doing these crossers with Achane where he'd go out like it was a swing route and then come back towards the middle of the field. He'd have a couple linemen in front of him, and it was like McDaniel was that 7-8-year-old playing Madden where he's like, I got a play that's working, I'm gonna keep doing it. And it looked like Quinnen Williams kind of screwed Devon Achane into the ground at one point. He spun him around it like a top. It seemed like it was something out of the cartoons. So I'd love to see Mike McDaniel get into his bag this week and show, hey, the rushing game, it was very inconsistent this year, but I still have these tricks that next year come in here with Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, and hopefully Jalen Wright, and we have a rushing attack that can average 5 yards per carry again like last year.
And that will be the weird thing, right? This offensive line is absolutely depleted. You're missing X, Y, and Z, and they're going to go out there and rush for like 200 yards on the ground. You're going to wonder, where was this all year? I mean, that just seems to be the Mike McDaniel way. So I think, we don't know for sure if Mike McDaniel is even on the hot seat, if those conversations have even happened. We don't know if Chris Greer's even on the hot seat, if those conversations have happened. But those guys know this. So, I mean, this, regardless of what we think as fans, we think the season's cooked. These guys are going to go out there. The players, the coaches, they're going to lay it all out there, right? You hear Anthony Weaver talking about head coaching openings that he's not interested in. They want to see him go out there and, put beating down on Aaron Rodgers in that offense. I mean, Garrett Wilson torched Jalen Ramsey it was that one play, but he had a big day against Jalen Ramsey. I mean, go out there and show that you've learned something from that earlier game and, blank the Jets. And that, could be the difference in those coaching interviews. So I think everyone's going out there trying to lay it on the line. I'd love to see Mike McDaniel in that run game to finally get going. But I think no matter what happens, we're going to sit here and say, where the hell was it all year long? Like, they're going to run Jeff Wilson up the middle or Jalen Wright, and we're just going to be like, dude, really? Not in Lambeau, but here?
It's going to, Jeff Wilson will get 4 runs and 3 of them will be right up the middle, and it will be 3 plays where he just pops out the other side. And it's going to be so incredibly frustrating. Josh, we mentioned it earlier. The Dolphins didn't have any Pro Bowlers, and Pro Bowl is such a narrative based, award because Zach Sealer had a season that was good enough. Jonnu Smith season that was good enough. And I'd even say Jason Sanders. I think he was good enough to be a Pro Bowler. None of them get in, but it's all narrative driven, kind of like coaching searches, man. Ben Johnson, he's been at the top because the Lions have been trending in the right direction. With Miami starting 2-6, do you think Anthony Weaver has a legitimate shot as a head coach going into next year? Dolphins win. If they go 9-8, 8-9, are you really an owner of an NFL franchise? And don't get me wrong, man. I think Anthony Weaver's done a good job. I think this has been a top 10 defense. And if it hasn't, I'd argue that with, premier edge rushers like Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, it would be a top 10 defense. But I just don't know how, if you're a GM, if you're an owner, you look at Anthony Weaver, and again, no offense, he has the coaching experience. I think he's a great hell of a coach. But like, if you're going to bring into your fan base, it's like, yeah, we just hired the guy off a team that went 9-8. Really? That's what we're going to do here. I don't know if a team would follow that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I think a lot of it goes back to, him. I think he had 2 interviews with the Commanders, a year ago. So he did have some head coaching interviews already, which, may have laid the groundwork down. But I mean, I'm looking at Brian Flores. I feel like he's going to get a head coaching job before an Anthony Weaver. There's some other names out there as well. So it might take some time before Anthony Weaver, Frank Smith, both those guys get head coaching jobs. So I think you're right. We might be good with Anthony Weaver. Might get to finally see what that defense can do next year with Chubb, Phillips, and Chop Robinson, whoever they bring in, and, see what he can really lay out there. But I think you're right, man. I don't think a team's going to come and poach Anthony Weaver, but it's probably going to happen now I said it.
He's a great coach, yeah, and I do think there's opportunity there. I do think a team would be happy to have him. But did you see the Bears? Right, they already fired Matt Eberflus. They fired a bunch of coaches. Their GM Ryan Poles, Josh, do you know where he went to college?
No, right up the street from you.
College. Boston College. Do you know who else went to Boston College?
I see what you did there. Yeah, I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I did see that. You see this Dory brain, dude? I even saw yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Tell me what you're getting at here.
So the rumor is that Brian Flores could be the next coach of the Chicago
quarterback
Bears.
Whisperer.
Quarterback Brian Flores.
And Caleb Williams.
Oh my, man. Oh
Eating
my.
breakfast. Eating breakfast together, watching the all-22 and just doing batshit crazy stuff. Yeah, I want to be in that meeting. I don't think all the people skills and growth over the last few years could turn Florida. I would love to see that. That's a sitcom. I'd be all for
it. The Jets defense, the Jets offense, Morgan Moses, your starting right tackle. He has not practiced Wednesday or Thursday because of a knee injury. Guard Elijah Tucker, guard, he hasn't practiced either day this week because of an ankle injury. Aaron Rodgers was sacked 4 times last week, and he actually pulled himself from the game at the start of the fourth quarter when the Jets were losing 40-0. It was just a really, really sad performance where the backups were even going in. What I want to ask you, Josh, Aaron Rodgers, he sits at 499 career touchdowns, and I kind of get the feeling that part of the reason why he is going to be playing this week is to get that 500th touchdown. If he's going to retire, I think the idea is I want my 500th touchdown. You have Devontae Adams. He scored his 250th touchdown, and odds are, Aaron Rodgers would love to throw it to him. Rodgers loves his narratives. But I want to talk about the time he was sacked 4 times last week, and you consider these offensive line injuries, Josh. Chop Robinson. He sits at 6 sacks on the year, 2.5 short of Jalen Phillips' rookie record, 8.5 franchise record, 8.5 sacks from 2021. What are the odds you give Chop Robinson against Aaron Rodgers who can't move behind a banged-up offensive line that just let him got sacked 4 times last week? Does Chop Robinson have any shot to break this record?
Yeah, I was going to go on brand, just say he has a 69% chance of breaking the record. I mean, you're setting this up, though, man. I absolutely feel like he could do this. I thought you were going to ask which was more likely, Rodgers getting his record or chopping his, and I would have probably said Rodgers, just because we saw him we only had 1 touchdown, I think, the last time they played. So that would be – I still think I'm gonna go with Chop Robinson. Yeah, man, I think Chop Robinson can do it. I think he's going to break the record. We're going to hear the Phillips and Robinson debates until we're blue in the face. I mean, that might follow him their entire career here in Miami. But, yeah, I like his odds against a Jets offensive line that – I don't want to say is a revolving door because who are we to talk, but they've been a bit banged up these last few weeks.
Oh no, they're absolutely revolving door. We are too, and I think we're like 15th and 16th in terms of sacks allowed per game too. So it's funny how that works, but it's the Jets, man. We can always, no matter how bad the Dolphins get, we can always make fun of the Jets. Something that worked so well for the Jets last time. I mean, they scored 26 points. I think Aaron Rodgers threw for 339 yards and a touchdown, completing 27 of 39 pass attempts. Anthony Weaver said something that worked so well for Aaron Rodgers is simply he's a veteran quarterback and he was able to diagnose defenses, figure out where his reads were, and instantly move the football. Josh, it did feel like it was that simple. Do you think that the Dolphins could maybe start to confuse Aaron Rodgers when you consider Javon Holland, limited back-to-back weeks with a wrist injury, might be his last game as a member of the Miami Dolphins, and then Jordan Poyer, he's not practicing Wednesday or Thursday because of knee and finger injuries?
I don't know, man. I mean, that was kind of the most frustrating thing watching that game was watching like Aaron Rodgers, avoid some of the pressure, roll out, make some of the plays he did, and just remember that you have Tua Tagovailoa, younger. I mean, I don't want to bring back Tua, but I would see Aaron Rodgers extend plays and be like, dude, come on, man. That's a corpse doing it. I want to see my quarterback make those plays. So, yeah, I don't know, man. He's a veteran who, can read defenses like the back of his palm. I think the Dolphins, with some of those injuries, I don't know if Javon Holland's going to be out there. He might be, sitting this one out. Jordan Poyer, you said will play or he's not going to play?
He actually hasn't I think Javon Holland might be more likely. He's been limited 2 days in a row. I think Jordan Poyer is not practicing.
I wish I had it up. Someone had a Jordan Poyer quote where he said he was playing, but I kind of was getting ready because I was getting ready to quote tweet it and say, like, is that a good thing? So I think it was Omar Kelly. So yeah, no, it's not. So either way, man, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have just fine of a day against this Dolphins secondary. And it could just be a shootout. That'd be Aaron Rodgers versus Snoop Huntley? Do we get another shootout?
I was going to ask, man, do either of these teams, I mean, the Jets are coming off an absolute butt-kicking 40-14. Which team do you think is more likely to come out looking like they quit? I mean, we go back to what we said at the top about McDaniel, too, the leadership, the idea. Is it a scenario where Rodgers marches down 7-0 early and everybody quits?
Yeah, no, I can't see that. I think the Jets have quit. I think it was before the game last week, wasn't it? Garrett Wilson quote going around like if Rodgers is here, I want traded or something. So I think they're in absolute disarray. I think that team has quit. But with the biggest X factor to me is just Rodgers. If this is his last game, he might go out there wanting to, give the double bird salute, middle finger, and I'm out. So I don't think Mike McDaniel's team's going to quit on him. But could you see it?
I mean, I don't think so.
Joe Philbin got quit on. I'm pretty sure they quit on Joe Philbin. Adam Gase
in London. They quit on Joe Philbin in London. I'm pretty sure
they were on vacation. They're like, this was a harder work than Joe Philbin practice is what they were thinking probably.
I like this game for Miami. I do think this is going. I kind of still thinking what's going to happen is what I said during our recap show, Josh. I think this is a scenario where Miami's has a couple things to feel good about. Snoop Huntley's playing well. Maybe Chop Robinson gets that sack record. The Jets do look like a team that's quit. But, man, I think the Dolphins can win this game like 27-10. Rodgers gets that touchdown, maybe even late in the game. I think he tries to stick around as long as possible. I do think the Dolphins are going to be a team hungry, wanting to prove, like, you got guys like Calais Campbell who are here to win a championship. I think you have a lot of guys who want to send a message about going into next year. Calais Campbell even said as much, that a win Sunday, if you don't get in, will go a far way for the guys who will be here next year. And obviously that indicates that he may not be here, but we're going to continue to hold out hope. I like 27-10. Josh, where are you feeling?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback off you and just go 24-7. I think we get that Rodgers touchdown, but I feel like the Dolphins are going to come out and dominate this one. And I think we said the same thing in the last one. We went to overtime. So it's just going to be a wild ride. I'm just so thankful that you and I made it through the season, man. And we're sitting here and with all of our listeners that, joined in throughout the year. It's been a hell of a Hawaiian roller coaster ride. And looking forward to what this next 2025 year endeavor could become.
Josh, I know you got to go. One quick question, though. Carson Wentz, he's starting for the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 8-point underdogs in Denver. The Dolphins game doesn't matter if the Chiefs don't win that one. So what do you think?
Right, yeah. It sucks. They have them going on at the same time. So, like, our heart – I don't even know what we want. I don't even know what we want at this point. But, yeah, Carson Wentz, I know he went out there and said, it means a lot to the guys out there, showcasing what they can do. No, man, there's nothing I think they can do to beat the Broncos. But I'm saying that again, man. That's what's going to happen.
Rookie quarterback against a division rival, and he knows he's facing backups. What's more pressure than when, like, you're an 8th grader and you're facing a 6th grader in, like, one-on-one hoops, and, like, they score 4 points before you get on the board? Like, that panic, man, that fear is real. Where that's kind of what I'm hoping happens, right? They get punched in the mouth early, and Bo Nix maybe forces it a little bit too much.
Could you? Yeah, man, this season's never going to end. They're going to sneak in, and we're going to see Tua Tagovailoa, and they go up to Orchard Park, is that what it's called still? Ralph Wilson Stadium, whatever the hell they call it. And dude, that'd be crazy. You got me excited now, because that's the perfect example, right? You're going against a lesser skilled player. You're playing your little sister in a Madden or something, and she somehow gets a pick 6, and you're like, oh shit, like
it's Mortal Kombat, and the button mashing works. It's like they're just smashing the button. It's like I know these moves, and it's not working. You're just mashing.
Yep. Yeah, we don't need that. We do need that.
But that is it. That is all the time we have today on Another Dolphins podcast. Josh, you said it the best. We have made it through the year. Thank you so much for being my co-host. 18 straight weeks, and thank you all so much for joining us on Another Dolphins podcast for our final regular season preview of the season. We will be back to talk about all of the news from the weekend,